So, what happened this week? I don't know where to begin. Actually, it was week before last. It turns out the NSA and they had failed miserably. What happened was our government has a bunch of information, very, very, very important, pertinent, useful information to our enemies. And they protect it by putting gum on a lock. Okay? They lock a door with bubble gum. And it wasn't encrypted. Okay? And it was protected by idiots who didn't know the proper procedures for handling security problems. People who had been told what to do, but didn't follow those procedures. And there's certain information, there's forms when you work for the government in a secure situation. There are these forms you fill out, I forget what they're called. But you put on those forms, here's things people can use against me to try and bribe me or to try to blackmail me. That there's forms to fill out that say that. So if you're a closet homosexual and you don't want that to get out, you would put that on there. That's something that can be used against you. If you have a gambling problem and you know it and you know that this could be used against you, you put that on there because they're going to find out about it and they're going to be very upset if they didn't know about it on these forms. Anything at all. I mean, really, really bad stuff. If you have affairs and you don't want your wife to find out, or husband or whatever, you put that on these forms. Okay, it's stuff that can be used against you. The government needs to know about that kind of crap so they can help head it off. So that the enemies of our country cannot find this out about you and use it against you to get government information. All kinds of crap. How much money you owe everyone, what situation your health is in. So how you can afford your own health care, this kind of stuff. The health care of your family, how desperate you are for anything. I mean, for anything in the universe, how desperate you are to get it, how desperate you are to hide it, how desperate you are to get rid of it. All of these things are extremely important, and they're on those forms. That is what the enemy got. Now, I say the enemy. It's in this case, they said it was China, or agents in China, who got this information. Now, I've been reading some articles. I've got them all listed somewhere, but I'm not going to put links. Screw that. Look it up on your own. They were saying that they used human intelligence to crack into this system. So they used somebody's credentials. So encryption really wouldn't have mattered because they would have gotten through the encryption anyway. But what really just pisses me off that I cannot get past is how they found out they were being hacked. How they found out they were being hacked. They invited in a company who had hacking protection. And that company, as a demo, said, well, here's what our hacking protection looks like. We're going to install it on your system, run a scan for free, and we'll show you. And bam, they found stuff. As a matter of fact, they found stuff that had been around for over a year. So it looks like whoever hacked this had access to everything for more than a year. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Basically, everything the NSA had been piling into any kind of supervisory system, any supervisor disputes, anything to do with handling people at the NSA or the CIA or really in the government. If you had a clearance, basically, essentially, if you had a clearance and you were in the military, you worked for the government, or you were a direct contractor, they've got all that information you use to get that clearance. There's names for these clearances, but I can't remember. But so that's tens of thousands of people, basically. And this is the information the government doesn't want the enemy to have. It had been around for over a year. They figured out that it had been somebody had let their credentials slip somewhere, and that's how they got into the system. And once they got into the system, they were able to stay in the system by hacking other people's accounts. So not just the one person's account, but several different people's accounts ended up getting compromised. And so encryption wouldn't have helped. Everybody's screaming about, oh, they need to encrypt that data. Well, in this case, it wouldn't have helped. Because it was sloppy passwords. People keeping hold of their password information in a very sloppy manner. Need double, triple, every time. Oh my God. So here's where we're headed. What they want to do is what some banks do in places. Well, you have a password, okay, normal, and then you have a little credit card looking thing that spits out a number. So you hit that number on the credit card thing, and based on the time of day and and other information and some encrypted information on that key, you type that key in as well. And every few seconds you hit the button, it's a different number to type in. And the computer on the other end has the same formula, so those numbers have to match as well as your password. It's two pass essentially, 2 pass, and you can do 2 pass, 3 pass, 10 pass. And there's other methods of doing it. There's actually formulas you can use for all this kind of stuff. It's pretty normal in the industry to have these sorts of things available. Well, I stop and think about how many times a day I enter my password. I enter my password 150 times a day. Okay, that's what it feels like. Probably 35, 40 times a day I type in my password. Every time I sit down on my computer, I have to type in my password. Every time I go to different web pages on the intranet of my work, every third one is actually on a whole different server set, so it all has to be re-authenticated, so I have to type in my password. We have storage devices all over the place, so every different storage system that I use, I type in my password. We have several small networks all around the world that I have to log into to get my job done every day. So every time I log into one of those, it's a separate password. And every time on one of those networks I want to do the storage or the web or access one of their build systems, that's 3 separate passwords. And there's 5 networks, including ours. And then there's the generic sort of intranet network, and it sort of connects it all together. There's different places on it, and there's every time you go to a comm server or I think my yard guy just went by. Yep, that's him. Anyway, I think I gotta go write a check for the yard guy. Continue the vlog in a minute. Wow, man, it looks nice. Those guys do a good job. Not very much money either. I think I've covered it before. I get the ethnically diverse neighborhood price. So my friends get $40, a week that they have, or 40 times a trip they have to pay, and I pay 25. And I believe it's all just because of the neighborhood I live in. Anyway, I know it's the same grass, right? But that's how our world has chosen to work. Anyhow. Where was I? Let's see. I was complaining about having all of the login stuff. So where is this going to lead us when it comes to how we're going to treat? How are we supposed to authenticate in the future? I mean, even when I use fingerprints on a device, okay. So I take my fingerprint and I go not like that. What that's doing is it's taking the ridges on my finger and the timing of the swipe, and it's making a mathematical algorithm out of that. And it's comparing it every time I swipe it. It has a little fudge factor, because things change as we grow older. Our fingerprints change just a tiny little bit, or we might cut our finger or something. There's a fudge factor built in. So every time I swipe my finger, that's converted into a digital mathematical algorithm, a formula, if you will, for my finger going past the little swiper deal, and that is compared to past swipes, and it decides whether or not it's close enough and it's going to let me in. Okay, but what happens if I bypass the swipe step and I steal the algorithm and insert the algorithm and make it look like it was just swiped? So once you lose your biometrics, they're gone. I mean, it's not like I can ask for new fingerprints, right? Same with genetics. I mean, if I tap my finger, and what if somebody steals my genetic code and uses that in some digital manner? Once it's gone, it's gone. It's not like I can ask for new digital, new genetics. It doesn't matter how I authenticate myself, it's going to get compromised because nothing's perfect. I can't have a 10,000 character password. It would just get stolen at some point. If somebody wants to hack in, they're going to get in. So what we need to do, the only solution to this is to not have hackers, to not have people who want to steal the code, and that's not going to happen. So we have to have, it's an arms race. We're going to constantly have to get more and more complex. It's already to the point where human beings cannot be trusted. Okay, we as humans cannot be trusted to take care of our own security. We have to have special teams for this. It's already gotten to that point. We can't use our biometrics because, believe it or not, biometrics are pretty easy to steal. It's easy to intercept the biometric signal and steal it. And it turned out that was not really a good way to go. The systems can be fooled too easily. I don't have a solution. I mean, the whole concept of hiding data is flawed. So, if you really don't want anyone to get the data, destroy it. If you have to keep the data around, then separate it and don't let people have access to it. The more people you let have access to it, you need gatekeepers, and even that can be compromised. And then all of a sudden, you open up the floodgates of problems. Okay, let me show you. Let me show you a case in point here. Our car has a lock right here on the door. You want to know something else it has? It has glass. And I could take my human hand, I'd probably break my hand, but I could punch that window and I have a pretty good chance of breaking it. If not that, let's see, I probably couldn't use that. Let's see, I probably couldn't use that. Well, what I could use, I've got a flashlight on my belt that has a steel metal bezel. That would probably break that glass if I smashed it into that glass. Okay, so I have something on my person that would let me smash the weak point of that security mechanism. And to be honest, if the car is on fire and I'm passed out inside it for some reason, I want the glass to be breakable so that a human being can walk up, break the glass, and pull my unconscious self out of the vehicle in case of an emergency. So there's compromises. But, you know, the glass doesn't really stop criminals. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. I think I've covered this situation before in my blogs. It's just there is no solution. The problem is if humans make the mechanism that protects the data, then humans can make the mechanism that breaks that mechanism that protects the data. You know, people are the weak factor. I don't know. One of these days, somebody will come up with a decent method to save your data that really does protect it somehow. Right now, encryption seems to be the way to go, but of course that's just temporary. I mean, any encryption used today in 5 years is going to be, you know, nothing. It'll be nothing to crack that encryption. It's not that computers are getting more powerful, because they're not. They're actually getting less powerful. It's just that the methods of cracking encryption are getting better. It turns out that a lot of old encryptions that people thought were really good back in the day are just junk. And there's usually a trick to just taking them out and getting into them, I should say. If anybody out there has any decent security recommendations for digital data, please let me know. My company would be highly interested in it, as well as myself.